My name is Ruth Manis. I am the Executive Director of MoCA Westport. I am here interviewing Eva Cavacci, Chair and Curator of 60s Mod, and Kathy Benowitz, Town Curator of the Westport Public Art Collections. We are here today to go through this amazing exhibition that has been put together alongside of our high school exhibition. I'll start with some questions. Eva, can you provide an overview of 60s Mod, how you came up with the concept for this exhibition out of the collection that is in front of you?
Absolutely. So this show includes works that focus on the 1960s, but from a range of dates from 1955 up to about 1975. This era is a real strength of the collection. We have a lot of works from this period. The schools part of the collection was started in 1965. So we thought this was a great opportunity, approaching the 60-year anniversary of the founding of the Westport Schools collection, to showcase some of the works that both came into the collection in the 1960s and works that have come in since then, since it's such a strength of the collection.
Do you want to give a little bit of background about the Westport Public Collection and the history?
Yeah, I'll give an overview. It's very important because I think people don't know. And so we call ourselves the Westport Public Art Collections. And we have to think of that as an umbrella organization, if you will. And under that umbrella are three different facets. There's the Town of Westport's art collection, there's the Westport WPA Depression era collection, and then there's the Westport Schools Permanent Art Collection, which Eva's mentioned. Now, all three of these collections are intermingled, intermixed, and it's really just a governance issue of who accepts the works of art, who maintains the insurance, and things like that. However, the founding mission of the Westport School Permanent Art Collections that Bert Chernow and other teachers really started creating as the Westport Art Collection in 1965 really is the guiding spirit and mission of this larger entity at this point. The town collection is really the oldest, and it goes back to 1909 when the Minuteman was erected, because that was by a teacher and artist from the Art Students League who was here as part of the flourishing art community. The WPA collection was the first art that was created through the U.S. Treasury Department. The Westport Committee had those artworks for the schools, so schools were always the forefront of how art was created by Westport artists and how it was displayed. And it was meant to be a source of visual stimulation, but also educational. And then when Bert Chernow founded the 60s, it took a new tactic and more philosophical, which we can get into later. But that's really how we are structured.
Yeah, amazing. I had children in the Westport Public Schools, so to go into those schools and see the work is pretty incredible. I think what we love about the collaboration with Westport and MoCA and bringing this in for a yearly show is that a lot of people don't have kids in the schools or don't get to see the works, on a daily basis like that.
So. And I think that was an important initiative 3 years ago when we started this. It was, how do we take this really unique asset to the town, our school system, which is, what other community do you know of this size that has a world-class art collection? I mean, certain cities do, New York City does.
I know. Every time I think about it, it does give me chills because when you think about the city schools and how blank they are and, you walk through the halls and it would be incredible to have this in almost every town and to really highlight the work that's being done in those. It's a real gift. How do you go about choosing the theme each year?
Well, that's a great question. Yeah, we have discussions, since this is a collaboration, we start off with discussions together. The Westport Idea Show was the first show 3 years ago now. And that was a little bit more similar to this show, where it was picking up on strengths of the history of the collection, bringing together various artists from Westport, as well as artists working further afield into the same space to put those into conversation. And then last year we had a single artist show. So we kind of alternated from a group show to a single artist focusing on another artist who's also active in the 1960s in this area, Paul Camacho. And then this year we decided again to bring together all the various media that are represented in the collection. So we have paintings, prints, which is another strength of the collection, photography, another strength as well, together in this show.
I'd like to add one thing. So the first show, we called it the Westport Idea, not only because of these, these unique moments in Westport's history that have contributed to the collection, but also because Westport Arts Advisory, which Westport Public Art Collection is a town committee, and MoCA came together to do this new idea. And it was like, it was post-pandemic, and we're like, how do we get people into the museum again? How do we get people interacting with the art? And so we collectively had this idea. And so this Westport idea really transformative to starting this, this series. And each one of the shows have really featured works that have been were original to the 1965 collection. And it helps carry through that narrative each year.
Absolutely. Are there any unique stories or anecdotes related to any specific artworks in the 60s Mod exhibition?
A couple of interesting things we discovered, because in putting together an exhibition like this, we do a lot of research. We look into the works, we look into our records about the works. With the piece over there, The Wake of Two Ships, a photograph, that's been hanging at Cullytown Elementary School, perhaps since your kids were there, I'm not sure. In looking at the journal article, Art Education, that Bert Chernow published in 1966, and which was kind of the inspiration for the floating wall, we discovered that the photograph was framed upside down. It has been hanging upside down since at least 2000. In the Learning Gallery in the back, which I'll talk about a little bit later, we have a wood block from Lisa Doherty, and we received the gift of her prints recently from the James Doherty Foundation. And two of the prints, a larger one called Sunset City and a smaller one called Arts and Antiques, in my head they were always two separate prints. But in looking closely at this wood block, we realized it had also been used for Sunset City. And then when we were installing, Kathy flipped over the wood block and we saw marks from the ink roller with the various colors.
Do you add to that narrative then when you have these discoveries?
Yes, this all goes into our collections
That's
database,
wonderful.
and we put the notes in there.
I'd like to add two more because I think they're important, they're foundational parts to this. And one is the homage to Ben Nicholson by Comet right over here. And that is a very important painting because, again, is one of the first works to the collection and has likely been hanging at Greens Farms Elementary School ever since it was given in 1965. What's important is that both Bert Chernow and Ann Chernow studied under Comet at NYU. And it was his influence and his advocacy for art and original art to be in public spheres and especially in educational environments that they came back to Westport to teach and to be practicing artists, and then instigated this Westport art collection and started creating it for the community. And the second is right behind me is Ann Chernow's, and this actually, we learned, this is called Billboard, and you can see that it's a billboard in a grassy plain of which a painting of hers is being featured. And in working on the second show on Paul Camacho, we learned that Paul Camacho, Ann Chernow, and Ben Johnson were three artists that Ann organized to create a billboard project around the state of Connecticut, in which works of art that they created were enlarged and mass-produced and made into billboards. So they were in downtown Bridgeport, they were downtown Hartford, downtown Watertown. They were all over and made an impact. And so this project was in the early 70s, and this is one of her compositions for that project that was also funded by state arts funding. So, public art in a much larger sense. So I think that this exhibition really engages with the community because it's here in a beautiful museum space and in a proper official museum space. And to have the works of art come out of people's offices, come out of hallways, come out of conference rooms, and be available for the public to see is primary. But secondly, these works of art yearn to be in a space like this, and they glow, and they really, it's wonderful to see them in a context in which they can be appreciated as objects in and of themselves, but also seen in thematic context, and in a truly beautifully organized and conceived exhibition.
Yeah.
So I think it adds different elements to it.
Absolutely.
And then, the benefit in the end is that, as we've talked about, the research that goes into this, and what was learned during the process of curating the exhibition, then benefits our audiences in the schools or in our municipal buildings, and the people that can learn more about it. So we're able to share more. So that's how that enrichment. And I think it also, the last thing is it really ties to this legacy, and some people call a myth of Westport being an art community, but there is a foundation of that. And while it may be a different mix over the different decades in the past, it's still a community that has many, many artists, whether they're visual artists or writers or filmmakers, TV, people. But there also is a dedication to the support of the arts and the patronage of the arts. So exhibitions like this help to do that.
Let's talk about Bert Chernow and his legacy.
As Kathy mentioned, Bert and Anne both studied under Howard Conant at NYU, and then Bert began teaching at Queens Farm School, which is how that became the location for the first exhibition of the collection that he began in collaboration with Vivian Testa, who was a fine arts director for the schools a long time, and with faculty and staff of the school. So, it was really a collaborative effort from the beginning, which it continues to be today. We're a committee of 25 who work on this today and to further that founding mission. Over that summer of 1965, he and others began to assemble this original collection of about 100 works that was on display at Queens Farm School, with the intention then of rotating this through the various schools, so that it was never intended to be pieces for permanent display in one particular location. That it was to rotate through so that students, faculty, staff, anyone in the schools could experience this on a daily basis, because he firmly believed that seeing art, being around art, as well as studying it, in a formal curricular setting, was so important to education. One of the things that's kind of a side benefit of this exhibition is we bring 60 works, into this space, and they don't all go back to the same places. Some of them do, but this gives us an opportunity to continue rotating the works through the schools, and we frame some new works for this show that we can then also put out on display. And Bert also left for Housatonic Community College in 1967 and continued a similar project there that we'll hear more about on February 8th, furthering that mission. Continued to advise the collection, but also Anne Chernow over the years has been a major champion. If you see the labels, you'll see many works that were donated directly by her. And she has also facilitated the gifts of so many works to the collection, including, most recently and just last year, a wonderful collage by Takeshi Kawashima, one of the most recent works, I think, donated.
That's a gem. That's a beautiful piece. Looking ahead, let's talk about what's ahead for really the Westport Public Art Collections. What's coming up? How are you choosing work? I know that that's a big part of when you get solicited for a donation, to give a donation to the public works. Do you look at all of that together as a committee? And
that's a very good question. And I want to use the Susan Malloy painting a little bit, Fireworks, as an example of that, because this show really is a celebration of this collection, right? And that exuberant, energetic explosion really shows and demonstrates the energy and reflects the energy that this committee and this collection has and its impact in the community. We were talking, Eva and I were talking about shows like this. I mean, all three of the past shows, and it's allowed us, and we've touched upon it in this conversation, that we're able to learn about those different things. But we are also the individual objects, but we're also able to do kind of a summary, a little bit of the collection to get an inventory of what we have that are strengths and where those gaps are.
Sure.
So I think that the collective knowledge and big picture and high altitude look that these exhibitions give us then allow us to be more strategic and more focused on what works of art are really appropriate to bring in, where we already have a lot of duplication, maybe areas that we have no representation at all. I mean, for example, just a couple of years ago, we, with the town, had a very engaged diversity initiative too, because we realized that there were very few works by people of color in the collection. And that was something that we went out and we sought works and sought donations and actually even acquired things through financial donations to our friends group to buy for the collection. And that was a gap. I think that a show like this also helps us see how many women artists are in the show and in the collection and what those strengths are and what stories and narratives we can tweak out from that. So I think there's a lot of, it opens up new opportunities not only for gifts to come in, but it also allows us to kind of create a working list of project ideas or future exhibit ideas that we can do. So if we could be a couple of years out with these ideas, we'll be in a really good place. And lastly, it helps us to really assess our conservation. For this exhibition alone, two of the major paintings, the homage to Ben Nicholson and Bilberg, were both conserved with the help of Westport Arts Advisory and some town funds to do that. So and these were very important paintings to the core collection. So one being officially in the school side and one being officially in the town side. Because this is the Anne Trinell work is one of 13 works that form the Bicentennial Trust Collection, which was created in the 1976 to 1978, in which artists were actually paid to paid $200, $300 at the time to donate their work. So the conservation of these four pieces and the reframing is really allows us to do that. So those are kind of some practical but also aspirational benefits. But that's something like that of where we'll go.
Well, I can't wait for next year. I mean, it's always just a fun thing to sort of look at what is ahead for curating out of this collection. It's impressive. Well, thank you both so much for doing this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, you
Yeah.
guys.
Thank you
You're
so much.
welcome.
It was fun.